Next day I go home, I start to do research, more research, more research. Couldn't find anything that dealt strictly with veteran suicide on a nationwide level.
Welcome to Vetted, where we spotlight the issues that matter to the veteran and military communities and their families, and the voices behind real change, from the battlefield to the front lines of advocacy. This podcast exists to shine a light on the misperceptions, misconceptions, and misunderstandings that persist within and around the veteran and military communities and their families. I'm your host, Jen Wagman. My guest today is someone whose story is deeply rooted in service, resilience, and relentless dedication to community. Jerry Shaffer, Executive Director and founder of the Red Star Family Foundation. In this episode, we talk about the Foundation's mission, the milestones they've already achieved, and Jerry's powerful call to leaders and communities alike. So sit back and listen in on this important conversation with a Marine, a mentor, and a man on a mission, Jerry Shaffer. We are here in Nashville. This is the end of a long but very productive day.
Yes, it is.
After a conference in Nashville, Tennessee, where we spent the day coming up with actionable items as a veteran service organization community where we could address mental wellness and suicide prevention. And you, sir, were one of the most impressive individuals and organizations that I think I saw come out of this.
Oh, thank you.
Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I'm Jerry Shaffer. I started the Red Star Foundation, and the Red Star Foundation is meant to honor the forgotten families. The forgotten families being the families of veteran and first responder suicides.
And how did that come about?
Honestly, till this day, I still am very shocked that no one has done what we're doing right now. And that, maybe the idea was there and nobody moved forward with it. But, just the fact that it hasn't been done still blows my mind. Pretty much everyone that I speak with blows their mind because it's a no-brainer. It should have been happening 10, 15, 20 years ago. But to give you a story on it, the background on it, I live in the Clearwater, Florida area. I'm out at a veterans event. I meet this lady. I'm talking to her. She's at the event. And she starts to tell me about her husband. And her husband was 24-year special operator, retired out of MacDill, right there in the Tampa area. And had been out for about 4 years, and he took his life. And that was 5 years ago. And so left behind wife and 2 children, set of twins. And as I'm talking to her, she says, I still have so many questions that I just don't know where to even start, where to get the answers to, if we're entitled to any benefits, if my kids are entitled to any benefits. And she made the comment that just stuck in my mind, just really resonated with me. And she said, I wish that there was a network like the Gold Star families, because they take care of themselves. And I instantly thought, well, there has to be a network. There has to be something out there. Veteran suicide is the biggest crisis that we've had in the veteran community ever. I mean, it's much bigger than even homelessness, which was a big problem and still is a problem, but certainly not on the scale that it was back in 2012, 2013 timeframe. So I told her, I said, hey, listen, I'll go home. I'll do some research on the internet. I'll get the resources you're looking for, and I'll send them to you. Didn't think anything of it. Went back and enjoyed the rest of the evening talking with other veterans. Next day I go home, I start to do research, more research, more research. Couldn't find anything that dealt strictly with veteran suicide on a nationwide level.
So you gave some statistics earlier when you were speaking to all of us that I found shocking about the actual number of veteran suicides that have taken place in comparison to other casualties. Can you share those, please?
Yeah. Again, within the research that I did initially, I came across a stat that since 1950, so 75 years ago, there's been 102,000 KIAs for the United States. So I look at that as 102,000 new Gold Star families since 1950. Looking at veteran suicide, roughly 150,000 since 2001. So 24 years, so a third of the time, And in the next 6 years, it'll be about double of the number of KIAs. Just unbelievable statistic.
It really is.
Unbelievable number. And unlike the 102,000 Gold Star families, a lot of them were from Korea, Vietnam. Obviously, our numbers in those countries were a lot larger. Those families have since passed. So I don't know out of that 102,000 how many Gold Star families are alive right now. But I can tell you from 2001, the majority of those families are still with us. And so you have, by the way, suicide impacts at least on average, 6 family members or loved ones. So you multiply that 150 times 6, and you come up with 900,000. That's just direct family members and loved ones. The stat that I should have shared earlier today that I didn't is that suicide overall, on average, impacts 135 people total. So you're talking extended family, friends, co-workers, school teacher. I mean, everybody that's within your network, it impacts 135 people. Now, there is the TAPS program, which you're probably familiar with. And so the TAPS program does help with veteran suicide. That's not their focus. They do a lot of different things. They do a lot of great things. And but there's no one focused on veteran suicide. And so that just blew my mind. Started thinking about it more, and looking around and like, you know what? This needs to be done. We need to have a network like Gold Star families. Even the Blue Star families have a great network. We need to have that network, and we need to be able to put these chapters all over the United States and have a peer-to-peer group come together, have these families come together. And so as I'm thinking about this, and by the way, this happened at the end of July, beginning of August 2024. So this is literally 6 months ago.
Wow. Okay.
And as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to draw from the same vein as Gold Star and Blue Star, we should have our own banner. What color are we going to go with? I automatically dismissed red.
Really?
Completely dismissed it. It was my first thought. Red, white, blue, very patriotic. Mm-hmm. But I dismissed it, and here's the reason why. So if you look at a a Gold Star banner and Blue Star banner, the outer border is red. Mm-hmm. And then they have the Gold Star, and then they have the Blue Star in the center. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of a red outer border and a red star. And to me, that just seemed communist looking.
Okay.
And that was all I could think of. Mm-hmm. So completely dismissed it, didn't even think about it. And I put a graphic up, put the red border around it, put the stars in there, and started changing the star. Tried orange star, tried a purple star, tried a teal star, tried all these stars, and none of them looked right. Mm-hmm. Not a green star, nothing looked right. It didn't look patriotic. Mm-hmm. Adding these other colors, it didn't look like it had anything to do with veterans or your service. Mm-hmm. And so I eventually, after probably an hour or 2 hours, was like, well, you know what? Let me go back to the red. And I put the red star in there, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I can't do it. It looks communist. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Why don't we change the background, the border? And we changed the border to blue. And voila, it looked very patriotic. Mm-hmm. It looked really well. If you look at the now family of banners, mm-hmm. Side by side, it fits in perfectly. Okay. So that's where the banner came from. And then we started looking at, okay, well, with the Gold Star families, and I know some Gold Star families, I'm friends with them, started looking at that and said, well, they get a pin as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a Gold Star pin that's handed out along with the banner by the government to the next of kin of someone that's KIA. And so we developed our own pin, and we made it the Red Star pin to go along with the Red Star banner and the Red Star Foundation. And it's a little bit more modern, obviously. I mean, the Gold Star pin, yes. I think, came out in the 50s or maybe a little bit before that, but a little bit more modern. It's 3-dimensional, and it just goes very well and complements. From a branding standpoint, mm-hmm. It's right on point.
Mm-hmm. So what are the goals of your organization right now? What are you working on?
Yeah, so we're working on obviously funding.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big piece of this. When you're looking at, oh yeah, by the way, we also include first responders in this. So we include active duty, guard, reserve, military, which our 2023 numbers were 523 suicides. We include the estimated 8,000 veteran suicides and then estimated 500 first responder suicides. So that's 9,000 overall.
Okay.
Now, one thing I do want to mention is that the VA's numbers,
Mm-hmm.
so suicide rate that they just came out with a few months ago was 17.5 per month.
Right.
Which is a little bit lower than the 22 that most people recognize that number, 22 suicides per day, veteran suicides. The thing that I will point out is that there are gaps in the VA's data. So a couple of different reasons for this. First reason is that they only have about half of the population of veterans in their system.
Interesting.
So they have roughly 9.6 million veterans in their system. There's about 19 million veterans in the United States. And the VA is working on that. They're trying to get everybody in their system, obviously. The other thing is that when someone dies by suicide, if they don't leave a note, even though you may know it,
Mm-hmm.
I may know it, and they may have said something, if they didn't leave a note and they just overdosed or they're driving down the road and intentionally get into a crash, then it's listed as an overdose, it's listed as a crash. There's also other data that the VA pulls from that they just don't, they're not going to get every single veteran suicide. So it's certainly higher than the 17.5 that they can pinpoint. Everyone that I'm talking to in the industry really thinks it's between 30 and 50. Wow. So it's higher than the 22 number. I think that there's probably some blame on both sides.
Okay.
I don't think that I wouldn't say there's a lot of blame on the VA side, simply because they're there for you to come and apply for.
Right.
So if you
That's
don't
what
come
I
and
mean.
apply,
Yeah.
if you don't come in and apply, they don't know what needs that you have. They don't know if you have a disability. And if you think about it, and it's interesting too, because I was talking to Congressman Bergman out of Michigan, who actually read our banner into the Congressional Register recently. He sits on the VA House, the committee in the House, and he said, we're not moving the needle. We're not. I mean, all these resources, all this money that we're throwing at this problem, it's not moving the needle. 2 years ago, the number was 17. A year later, it's 17 and a half. Well, that half isn't much, but it's not the decrease that we're trying to obtain here. So all this money, all the resources that we're throwing at this, it's not fixing the problem. And so that's part of where we're coming in. I mean, when I sat down to look at this, the last thing I wanted to do was reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of organizations out there doing a lot of very good things in regards to veteran suicide. And I didn't want to be just another organization. I really looked at this from the standpoint of what's something different, what's outside of the box, what's something new, what can possibly move the needle that hasn't been tried or done before. When I'm looking at all these things that we're doing, we have 4 programs set up already. When I'm looking at these 4 programs, to me, they make common sense. And I'm thinking to myself, why didn't someone else do these things? Why hasn't another organization, somebody else created the banner, created the veteran suicide awareness ribbon that we gave out to everybody? Why didn't somebody create this peer-to-peer network that we're working to build right now, strictly for the families and veterans? And let me backtrack a little bit. So even though this is about the families and the peer-to-peer network, anyone can join this network. So, if you're trying to help out veterans' families, if you're trying to help out veterans, if you're trying to prevent suicide, you can be a part of this chapter around the country and another resource for them. But it's focused on the forgotten families, it's focused on the veterans and to reduce that suicide rate. But at the end of the day, these should have been done years ago.
Right. So what do you see as we're not moving the needle forward or backward, as the congressman said, it's going up, not down? What do you see as the number one problem. Can you identify that, or is it not just one?
There's definitely not just one. I think one of the biggest ones, if not at the very top, would be the stigma of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it from the standpoint of just the families alone,
Mm-hmm.
the families are recognized as suicide survivors. Who wants to be labeled anything with the term suicide in it? First of all. Second thing is it brings a lot of shame. Who wants to talk about the shame, the guilt that comes along with your son or daughter or spouse that dies by suicide? So when you're looking at that, why would they talk about it? If you're trying to get these people to open up about it, and there's this stigma of it, why would they want to open up to anybody? Why would they want to say, hey, hi, I'm a suicide survivor? They wouldn't want that. That was part of the thinking when we created this banner. So from now on, they're not going to be known as suicide survivors. They're going to be known as Red Star families, Red Star spouse, Red Star wife, Red Star mom. I think that takes away some of the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they're going to be proud of that either, but the banner is meant to celebrate the service of that veteran.
Honor.
It's supposed to honor that veteran. They still sacrifice, they still serve their country. So that banner is a symbol of hope. It's a symbol of honor, a symbol of respect. So even though the act that they committed, is very sad, they can look at the positives of it, the positives of that veteran itself. And then, if they're wearing their Red Star pin or if they have their Red Star banner in the window, we're hoping that raises questions. Someone's going to ask, what's that pin? Someone's going to ask, what's that banner? And maybe they'll open up because they're a Red Star family member instead of a suicide survivor. So I think the stigma is one of the biggest issues. And oh yeah, by the way, statistics show also that a family of suicide is 3 times more likely to have another family member die by suicide than if their other family member died in any other manner. So 3 times more likely. So here's some families that don't want to talk about it, don't want to open up about it, don't want to, they probably don't know all of the other families that are around them that have been impacted by the same thing, whether it's veteran or just a civilian. But they've gone through the same things. So we're thinking that this Red Star banner and pin is going to open up these families to where, number one, they're recognizing each other, and then start to open up, start to have conversations because they've shared similar lives, they've shared similar experiences, and have similar stories.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing VA service organizations in lowering the number and addressing the challenge period so that we start to fix this?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't know if anyone has the answer to that. Again, they're throwing a lot of money at it. They're throwing a lot of resources, a lot of manpower at it, and it's still not moving the needle. So what can you do? The only thing that we're thinking about, and this is what we're starting to do, is hold presentations, both for the military themselves. We gave a presentation 3 weeks ago on MacDill Air Force Base. Hold them for veterans organizations. Have them take a pledge. Talk about the suicide. Show them our Red Star Voices video, and hopefully that has an impact with them, so that if they ever do contemplate suicide, or maybe they're contemplating right at that time as we're giving these presentations, that they'll rethink that.
Do you think that there has been a change at all in the mentality within active duty service members about mental health in general?
Yeah.
And CP treatment?
I am not so much in that space. Obviously, I've been out for 20-something years, so I can't speak so much to the active duty component, Guard, Reserve. But what I will tell you is the few people I have spoken with, I would say no. I would say no at all. The biggest challenge is if you have an issue, you have a problem, if you tell somebody your problem, well, then you might be removed from your job. You might end up being discharged from the military after a while, or some counseling and everything else. So people are afraid. They might lose their job, they might lose their position, they might be ostracized. Yeah, their clearances. So yeah, I mean, it's
That's what I hear as well. I mean, that is generally speaking the understanding I get from people. That, I mean, there was one veteran now who was active duty a year ago. I've been to dinner with his family and him at the same within the last year. On 2 different occasions, he's received calls. And it's not like I'm having dinner with them every week where this would. So think about the odds of him receiving on 2 different occasions within the last year that a buddy has committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's insane.
Yeah.
And it has actually happened 3 times, but I was there present for 2 of them, and it's heartbreaking.
It is very heartbreaking. I couldn't imagine going through something like that.
Well, I thank you for coming on and sharing your story, and for the work that you're doing in particular. It is so needed and really wonderful. I hope you'll come back on and share more of the progress that you've made, and I know we'll be working together over the course of the next year and hopefully longer to address some of these issues and to get the word out. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate your passion for helping veterans in general.
I appreciate it, and thanks for. We'll see what comes of this over the course of the next year. I'm so excited to be a part of it. I know you are too.
Absolutely.
So, all right, great. Thank you.